Hello again, this is Alfredo from Blind Secrets, the totally blind guy who reminds you that even though it's sad, when you die, everybody's life around you has to continue. Have you ever asked yourself, what happens when I die? I'm going to tell a story that I remember reading around the internet about several years ago. It's not about me, but it's an interesting story. Moreover, although the point of the story is quickly identified, I'm going to talk about what happens after you die. Because there's a really important thing that happens after we die that many of us do not consider. Because many of us think we're never going to die. But it happens. There are two things that happen in life that are guaranteed. You're going to die and you're going to pay taxes. And I'm going to talk about the dying part. So let's get to the story. This story is about a man. However, you could switch the man for a woman, and it's going to be the same point. There was this young guy. He was about 20, and he got a job at a factory. Or you could even say he got a job at an office. And about a year or two later, he married this great woman, and they had a son. Then he said, I want to give my child the life I never had. So he started working more hours. Instead of working 40 hours, he started working 50 hours. And then about a year later, they had another child. And this time he said, I want to give both of my children the life I never had. So I'm going to work more. I'm going to put in more overtime. I'm going to put more hours. I'm going to work 60 hours instead of 50 hours. And they're going to have everything they ever need. Everything I never had, they're going to have. He started working and the stress started to accumulate. He didn't notice, but he wasn't neglecting his spouse. She only wanted to talk to him. He didn't notice, but he was also neglecting his children. They just wanted to play with daddy. But he kept on working because all he wanted to do was give a better life to their family that he never had. And one day at work, be it because of the overwhelming stress, or because he didn't follow safety procedures, or because he did something risky that he used to always do before, but he didn't fully understand the risk that he was taking, he died. He died at work. When his family knew about this, they were shocked. They were devastated. His spouse couldn't stop crying. His children didn't understand fully what had happened to daddy, why he couldn't come home. His mom was crying. His dad was crying. Everybody was devastated. His brothers, sisters, cousins, all family members and close friends, they were devastated. They didn't understand why such a hard, good working person had just died. Why God had taken him. At work, all the coworkers were devastated. Some even cried. After the first week, the family was still devastated. The wife still kept crying. The children kept on asking for their daddy. However, after a week at work, coworkers, they were starting to plan how to fill his void, how to make sure that the work could be filled by another person, how the remaining coworkers could do the work that he used to do. After 1 month, his wife still was crying. She was devastated still. She couldn't understand. She just wanted to talk to him one last time. The children, they still kept asking for daddy. They just wanted to play a little bit more. But at work, everybody was talking less and less about him, less and less about the incident, and everything continued. After 1 year, his wife was now still feeling the pain, not only the emotional pain, but now the monetary pain because now they had to move from their house to another house because they couldn't afford the house anymore because the only person that worked was him. Or maybe she also worked, but she couldn't afford that house anymore without his income. The children were still devastated. They still missed dad. They didn't grieve as much, but they still missed him. They just still wanted to play with him. At work, it seemed like he was never there. Almost nobody talked about him. Nobody talked about the incident. Whether it be because they didn't know him, or new employees came in and never knew him, or because they didn't want to talk about a bad incident at work. Everything seems to be back to normal. After 10 years, the wife was still devastated. The children still missed their dad. But at work, it seemed like he never worked there. There was no track about him ever being at work there. Many of you will get the message, right? The message is simple. You're supposed to spend more time with your family, value your time with your family, because you never know when you might suddenly die, right? That should be the message, right? However, I want to talk about a more subtle message, one that many of us sometimes neglect or do not understand the consequences that happen after we die. So I'm going to talk about the things that happen after we die, from the most common things, the most obvious things that happen, to the things that I think not a lot of people think about but are really important to think about. So what is the first thing that happens when I die? The first thing that happens when we die is that our family members are going to grieve. They're going to feel emotional pain. They're going to be in shock. Our spouse is just going to feel like she just wants to talk to us one last time. Our children just want to play with us one last time. Our dad and mom just want to have that breakfast with us one last time. Our cousins, brothers, and sisters, they just want to talk on the phone one last time. Some even will feel sad and blame themselves for not being with us more time. However, we're not going to be there to tell them that it might not have been them at fault. It might have been a mutual fault, and that both of us didn't have time for each other. So what's another thing that happens when we die? Your position at work is going to be replaced by another person. So feel sure that your position is going to be able to be done by another person, and the business is not going to miss a beat. If you are self-employed, then maybe your business is going to have to close, but there's going to be another small business that's going to have to take your place. So eventually somebody's going to do your work, and that's just the fact. So what happens to my possessions when I die? What happened to my favorite car, to my favorite mug, to my favorite shirt, to my favorite chair? What happened to all my stuff? Well, some of the possessions, because they have a sentimental value, they're going to be kept by your family members and friends. Some other possessions, they're going to be donated because family members are not going to want to sell them off. And some of your possessions are going to be kept in the box, nicely tucked away in the closet or garage, so that when family members don't feel that pain anymore when they're reminded of you, they're going to open that box, they're going to look at the possessions, and they're going to remind you with a smile. Okay, so what really happens after you die? What are the things that I have to think about that nobody else thinks about, or that not many people think about when I die? Well, one of the things that we don't think about is about funeral costs. Not only do family members have to suffer through the pain of seeing us die, but they also have to sometimes accumulate the money for the funeral. So you're saying, well, that's the least I could do is pay for the funeral. I'm dead. Well, yeah, the least you could do is to minimize their pain, but not making it a monetary pain along with the emotional pain. Make it easy for them and just have money set aside, a little savings so that when something happens to you, then your funeral is covered. And that way they don't have to have that other pain, they just have to deal with the emotional pain. And you're saying, well, I can't save any money, I barely get paid anything. Well, it seems like a lot of us, we all have money to go out to like the Jack in the Box or hamburger joint or pizza joint or taco shop, but we never have time to save. So maybe we could not go that one time to that restaurant and maybe save a little bit so that we could accumulate some savings so in case something bad happens. And in case you're wondering how much a funeral costs, in San Diego it costs about $7,000 to $10,000. So you might want to start saving up now. So what's the other thing that not a lot of people think that happens when I die? Another thing that happens that not a lot of people think is that your spouse or your family members or the people that depend on you, they don't have that income anymore. If you don't have any insurance, they don't have that income anymore. So for example, in the story, I stated that the wife had to move from their house to another house because she couldn't afford the house. Although this is not the case all the time, it is most likely the case if the deceased spouse didn't leave a insurance policy or didn't have some savings. Another thing that we have to think about is our dependents. Like for example, I have 2 children. So what will happen if I die? Somebody has to take care of them. If my wife does not have a job or she can't find a job, who's going to take care of them? They're going to have to live from Social Security or welfare. And I'm not saying that welfare is totally bad. However, you want to leave something to your children and your dependents that is better than welfare. For example, an insurance policy. So what do you want to do when you're alive? You want to buy an insurance policy. For example, I have an insurance policy with my workplace. I know that the cost of my insurance is going to be high if I go to an independent insurance company, but I got it to my work. So when you get it to your work, it gets a little bit cheaper because your work can bargain for your insurance policy and that decreases your price. So let's say that you don't have a job, so you can't go that route. Then you want to go to like a credit union. Similarly to a employer, the credit union, they bargain for all their members, so you get a lower insurance cost. Another place that you can find a cheaper insurance is through an association. Like if you have nurses association, accountants association, carpenters association, maybe they can offer insurance that is at a lower cost than just going and buying it yourself. Another thing that we should think about is all the people that depend on us, on our income. For example, if we have grandparents or we have parents that depend on our income, then we should leave an insurance policy or savings so that it covers their income so that they don't suffer because we die. I know this is a hard subject to think about, like why should I leave money? It shouldn't be a money thing, it should be an emotional thing. However, we should be responsible and understand that when we die, it's not just an emotional thing, it's also a monetary thing, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we leave something for our loved ones so that they can continue on their life after something happens to us. Now that you know what happens after you die, tell me in the comments what are you going to do with this information to better prepare yourself and your loved ones in case the unexpected happens. If you like the video, please like it. If you like the content, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.